your host, John Coleman.
Hi everyone. Did you ever notice that a lot of Scrum teams are having 2 week sprints? And it's almost like in the organization that every team has a 2 week sprint. Is that the right thing to do? A lot of people say, well, we need to be consistent. We need to have the same sprint length so that we're all on the same rhythm and all that kind of thing. And I think there is a fundamental problem with that. Why would you have every team having the same sprint length? There might be some situations where that would be valid. The first thing I would say is let's just start off with a single Scrum team. Single Scrum team working on a product, because Scrum is for product development, not so much for project management. And so this team is delivering a product. So how long should their sprint be? I wouldn't be going for the most popular sprint length. I'd be asking a few questions. And one of the questions I'd be asking is, well, how long does it take you to deliver a done increment? Say what? How long does it take you to deliver a done increment? Because in Scrum, we've got a definition of done. It's kind of like the checklist for how we do things around here. The quality standards, so to speak, and maybe with elements of product quality in there as well, technical standards and product quality. And so it's kind of like a checklist for how we do things around here. So assuming a decent Scrum team has a definition of done that the team respects, because if they respect it, they can then have some hope of continually improving it. How long does it take them to deliver a done increment? And if it takes them 3 weeks, well, maybe you should have a 3 week sprint. Maybe. I don't see the point of having a 2 week sprint for a team that needs 3 weeks to deliver a done increment. I just don't get it. Okay, maybe you can say, well, if you're more famous than me, you might say, well, okay, you can't do it in 4 weeks, so I'll do it in two. This kind of attitude, and that's fine. But I would say for the ordinary people amongst us, if it takes you 3 weeks to get something done, according to the definition of done, we don't really want people taking any shortcuts with that. We don't want people building up accidental technical debt, or we don't want to be making the product increment lower quality. So stick to how long it takes to deliver a done increment. Now, where it becomes problematic is where it takes longer than 30 days to deliver a done increment. But then I think you've got bigger problems than the length of your sprint. You probably have issues with the product backlog items that you're taking in. They're probably too big. And then you probably need to be looking at some kind of splitting guides. There's lots of heuristics out there in terms of how you can break some items down. And failing all of that, you can use example mapping from behavior-driven development, where maybe you list out 25 examples for this product backlog item that will be needed by the time we go live. And in response to people saying, well, we can't deliver this in a sprint, it's going to take 6 weeks, we can't deliver it in 30 days. I say, well, can you just do the first example? What do you mean? But we know we have to do the second and the third example as well. Yeah, I know, but can you just do the first example? Let's just get some feedback and see how we get on with the first example, because the sprint review is kind of like an event where people find out what they don't want when they see it, right? So because people really struggle to articulate what they want. So consider example mapping as a technique to maybe get the item size a bit smaller so you can do things in 30 days. I had a chat with Tobias Mayer a few weeks ago, and he challenged me. He said, we can always do something in 30 days. And I think the man is right. I think you can do something in 30 days. There'll be some rare exceptions where that's not the case. So one consideration is, have you got a done increment? How long does it take you to deliver a done increment? Another consideration would be, well, the product owner changing her mind about what needs to be done and stuff like that. And injecting change into the sprint. Now, it is actually possible. You are allowed to bring change into a sprint. You are allowed to introduce product backlog items during the sprint, as long as you're not compromising the sprint goal. But people normally don't do that because normally we don't have enough evidence to say that we're not going to compromise the sprint goal. So unless you're using Scrum or Kanban, you won't really have the information that we're able maybe to answer that question. So we tend to avoid bringing changes in during a sprint, and we probably want to keep it that way, so that the team can be focused, so they can get what they started finished, so we can get some feedback sooner. And if you have a situation where you've got a 4-week sprint, you can actually deliver a done increment in 3 weeks, and the product owner wants to put change in. If you change your sprint length from 4 weeks to 3 weeks, what you've done is you've changed the average wait time for a new sprint from 2 weeks down to a week and a half. And ordinarily, I would say a product owner will probably be willing to wait a week and a half on average. Okay, it could be the wrong end of the sprint, in which case the sprint call might be obsolete, and that's a different story. And I've only had one of those occasions in my career. So I would say the length of your sprint should be how long does it take you to deliver a done increment. Also, maybe how long does it take you to do customer user research, maybe UX and so on. Maybe you want to get some response from prototypes, interviews, all that kind of stuff. So there's that consideration as well if you're using Scrum with UX. But keeping it, for most Scrum teams who are not so much into experimentation, I wish more were into experimentation. Then you'd be, how long does it take you to deliver a done increment? And no shorter than that, so that the product owner has maximum flexibility. So when new changes come into the product backlog, there's an opportunity to bring those into a sprint sooner, because the next sprint planning is going to be sooner. It's not as straightforward as that, though, because most of us don't work in single team products. We've got multiple teams working in the product. And so what do you do then when you got multiple teams? Well, the scaling frameworks that I'm most comfortable talking about are Nexus and Less. And in Nexus, if, say, for example, the overall product group had a 4-week sprint, it's totally okay for some teams to spin around inside that with a 1-week sprint or a 2-week sprint, or, slower teams a 4-week sprint. So as long as we've got the same boundary, in other words, the multiplication needs to work 1, 2, 4, 1 and 3, they would work. So you could have faster teams spinning around faster within the Nexus sprint. So why would you have a team that could deliver stuff in a week being stuck to a 3-week sprint? Nexus allows you to do it that way. On the other hand, in Less, the entire product group has the same sprint length. So or the entire product run. So you work at the same sprint length. So if we all have a 4-week sprint, every team has a 4-week sprint, or they have a 3-week sprint or 2-week sprint, whatever the sprint length is, we're all doing it at the same time. And the reason for that, it's not a bad reason actually, is you don't really want a situation where you come looking for help in my team and I'm not available because I'm in sprint planning for my team. That problem is avoided when every team does their events at the same time, including product backlog refinements being done at the same time and Less. So I can see the upside in that, where everybody would have the same sprint in that case, but I would hope that no team has a sprint length that's shorter than it takes them to deliver a done increment. So be careful, I would say, about having this default position of just having 2-week sprints because it's the most popular sprint thing. So we should have a 2-week sprint as well. I think the first question you should be asking is, how long does it take us to deliver a done increment? Should be really no shorter than that. If you've got problems delivering within 30 days, you got bigger problems than the size of your sprint. You got problems with your product backlog refinement, and maybe we'll talk about that more in detail on another episode. Meanwhile, consider example mapping. Consider maybe looking at the first example to break down product backlog items so they fit into smaller sprints, so you can deliver a done increment in a shorter period in 30 days or less. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. Talk again soon.